I think we start actually on the Gabby Durden one. We can knock that one out quickly. Because actually, if people don't know, she's basically announced she won't be involved with LCS next year, 2024, which comes on a year in which, I mean, I'll just say it straight up. I've tried thinking about this as esports historian. Dude, I think this might be the most disliked / reviled / hated talent I've seen maybe ever in Western League of Legends. Like, even as much as people might say they bagged on like Frostgorin, that was like a specific vocal minority didn't like Frostgorin, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bullshit reasons, quite frankly. But in this particular case, especially Reddit, I mean, if you just go and read the thread, Monty, where she says she's basically stepping down, there's not even anyone who's just sort of like, oh, I actually thought she was all right. Everyone's just like hating on her, just like, yeah, good, get out. She was bad. But I actually think the first place to start this discussion, in my opinion, like all like essay premises, is you have to examine the premise. So one thing I found really weird about this is it is implied to me, Monty, if you look at what she did on LCS and how she's leaving completely, she's not taking like a step back, different role. If you look at this and combine it with what happened with Dash, where he clearly had a vision of what he wanted to do, but then they wanted him to do something else, I get the vibe. I want to get your take on it because you actually know more about the inside baseball of LCS than me. Is it implied if you are going to be in the position of a Dash or a Gabby Durden, you can't just be the desk person, you can't just be the interview person? It seems like they want you to also be the commentator. They want you to sort of be like a jack of all trades. I know it's in general, it's like a Western League thing, because obviously in LEC people know analyst and caster is the same thing. It just depends which game you're on. So is it implied, do you think, that like she couldn't just be the desk and interview person? Because by the way, as I've said many times, I actually think she was good at that role. I actually thought she did a good job after the LCS championship. I think she did a pretty good job setting stuff. She clearly, by the way, the saddest thing about this to me is she obviously does have authentic passion for League of Legends. Like she wasn't just mailing that in. She's not a great actress. Like, I could tell she actually did like the game and cared about it. So what do you think on that? Is there some sort of thing where you have to be all in, do you think, to be in this role?
So I think it's really hard right now. I mean, I've complained about this multiple times as regards to LCS talent, because I don't think that the job is particularly difficult when you compare it to working in other regions. So even to this day in the LCK, obviously the casters are there 5 days a week. You know, you do 2 best of 3s when you're casting on LCK, and you do 2 best of 3s when you're on the desk at LCK, and they switch off on those roles. And I think it just means you can have fewer people on the broadcast, right? And I really have never understood why it is, from a casting perspective, that you do 2 or 3 best of 1s a day as a caster within the LCS, which has always been kind of the meta. Because remember, when people were doing this in the LCS, I was doing 2 best of 3s a day, casting them 5 days a week in LCK. So, you know, you don't need this many people, is what I'm saying. And you certainly don't need this many people when you could have the casting team do 2 best of 3s and then use those same people for the desk for the other 2 or 3 best of 1s rather within a day, right? It's not hard to work 5 games 2 or 3 days a week. And you can switch between casting and the desk. So if I was Riot and I was trying to cut costs, Thorin, what I would do is exactly what they've done this year, which is they brought in everybody under the sun.
Tier people, yeah, exactly. Yes,
they bring in everybody under the sun as a test. So here's what you do. This is,
by the way, it goes without saying when Monty says that they're paying them way less, like they're paying them the minimum possible rate, basically.
Yeah,
even
they're
even
paying,
if they were a big, like, small name, the whole point is they're so glad to be there. They're all going to take whatever they're offered, basically.
Yeah. They will pay them. They will end up paying less. So it really means that I think this year they were testing things. They were testing bringing in some of the contenders casters, using people like Gabby in order to see, does it affect viewership, right? But the answer is going to be no, by the way. It doesn't affect viewership, because if you don't have a competing product, if you have the monopoly and you're not offering people 2 streams with the same casters, which has been an experiment run in the past. I've told this story before, but I was part of the 2 times this experiment was run. One time, the experiment was run with me and Doa casting StarCraft against Tasteless and Artosis. Same games. Obviously, Tasteless and Artosis got all of the viewership. The second time this was run was when Riot introduced SPO TV as a competitor to OGN, and we were both broadcasting all of the games. Some of them were in SPO TV studios. Some of them were in OGN studios. Yeah, this was 2015. This was LCK. Well, before it became LCK, but yes, Champions Korea. And so what happened, guys, is that
It
even
was
when
actually
the
60K, by the way. You're just mixing up your years.
that's fair.
LS wasn't there in 2014, mate. Come on, mate. He
No,
came out years later. It's like 2016 or so, I think.
it was 2015. So what happened was LS was in the Spo TV studio with Valdez a lot of the time, and then Doa and I, or Papa Smithy, or Achilleos were casting OGN. And even when the games were not in the OGN studio, so when we were just in like a closet at OGN, we still got all of the viewership. So there's clear precedent that if you give people choices among broadcasters, that there are favorites, and you would think that those favorites would be compensated in a way that would be commensurate with that. So but if there's no other choice, right, then some people are going to go to co-streams, obviously, which have been eating up a larger and larger percentage of the LCS viewership as the LCS viewership has declined. And so I think what their data is going to say is that it doesn't matter who the broadcasters are. And so we should be, if we're paying somebody a day rate, they should be doing more games, which is something I agree with, by the way. I think these people work not enough, in my opinion. And if you can't be flexible between casting and being on the desk, I would rather just hire one group of like 5 people for the day, 5 or 6 people for the day, pay them all a day rate, and then switch them out. As we've seen from LCK, the play-by-play casters can act as a host role, and you have a couple of analysts in there in order to kind of fill out the information on the desk and in the broadcast. So to me, to answer your question, like, I'm incredibly cynical because of what I've seen and what I think it means for the LCS broadcast, which is that they are potentially, I think Gabby was probably not offered a renewal based on.
Right.
I mean, I could be wrong on that one. I could be wrong. That's not information, but I think that they're probably going to trim down the broadcast crew for next year and have been using this as a way to do it.
They have the perfect smoke screen, as I say, with the fact she was just, unfortunately, with the vocal minority, incredibly unpopular. So it's just also a really convenient way to, first of all, she gets the out because she gets to say, like, well, obviously, I don't want to keep doing it if I'm going to get like abuse. And then they just get to go, it wasn't working, so we're switching to someone new.
So, I think it's tough. I think it's going to be tough. I think that people are looking, obviously, for cost cutting within esports right now. And one of the ways you can do that is simply trying to find cheaper talent and then squeezing more out of them based on time. So I would anticipate that this is coming down the pipe right now.
The sad thing is, though, what I actually do hate about it is, if you know anything about the casting circle, when these people who've only casted challengers or like CB LoL or something, like they've been out there in the wild doing what they can to get some experience, when they get to announce, Monte, like, I'm doing LCS next week, they think it's their moment of like, I've made it, like, I'm finally here, like, this is going to be my career. And it's like, bro, you aren't. Like Monte's saying, this is a cynical move where, like, even if you're awesome, like, eventually you're going to be too good to keep the job because they're just going to do the same thing in 2 years. If you come along and say, as someone like a Dash did, like, but I'm really good and I'm established and everyone likes me, can I have twice as much money? I'm making up the number there. Can I have twice as much? They're going to go no. And in fact, we're just going to reboot the cycle. We're going to get another person who comes from the smaller region who will do it for less than you're doing now. We'll start with him again. And even worse, like Monty's saying, because you don't have some, like, I told everyone this would happen with Dash. You would all gaslight me. No, I really care about Dash. I care. You didn't even, not only did you not watch his stream, but eventually you forget he exists. You just keep watching LCS. So what happens eventually is you think it's going to have some big monumental impact. It doesn't. Like, we all tune in and watch the same game. It's just we grumble about the new caster. Like, Riot's not actually wrong. Like, it is the best way to save money, unfortunately.
Yes.
Especially if you don't really care about like the raw quality of the product. If it's just about getting something makeshift out there, this is actually a pretty good route to go if you don't want to spend money.
And look, I mean, I saw the writing on the wall with this in League of Legends, because as soon as Riot started absorbing Korean League of Legends and messing with it, it became very clear that I was not going to have any kind of negotiating leverage, because if they ate everything, which they did, it just becomes a monopoly. And that's why no caster can negotiate rates right now. And it's a huge, huge problem for the casters, because they have no power to negotiate better rates for day rates for themselves, because there's only one company to negotiate against, and they're just setting the market, whether that's fair or not. The other thing that they're doing is, obviously, outside of Cadril, basically, they're not giving people co-streaming rights. So there's no way for you to even compete if you wanted to. right? Like there's no way for you to build your own audience. And even with Cadril, you'll notice they haven't given him LCS co-streaming rights. Why is it that there are all these co-streamers for LCS and none of them are the actual casters? Why can't Captain Flowers on a day he's not broadcasting co-stream the LCS? Because they don't want to give these people these kind of opportunities. They have literally made a decision to lock, especially the LCS casters, into this arrangement with Riot, and there's no out for them. Like they are in a cage and they're not giving them co-streaming rights, and they're not giving anybody co-streaming rights to the LCS. It's ridiculous. Like I think that people like Azale or Captain Flowers should be able to co-stream on the days that they are not broadcasting, because obviously if fans of the LCS still want to hear their content, why are they not being given that opportunity?
I will just say, it's just right there, dangling in front of me. Gabby Durden did do a music video, Monte, called Ribcage, parentheses, Awakening. I'm just just saying, it's right there. And it was all about the cage opening up of that song. Just, many ways foreshadowing. Well-written script. Okay.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is just so malicious. The whole caster ecosystem is just so malicious from Riot.
On the specific Gabby Durden thing, formerly known as Latigris, if people remember, I do think one reason why she had to go is, mate, I didn't really notice that much improvement, at least in the areas that people didn't like it. And the problem with that is, this is pure speculation, but I don't think she's someone who didn't put in the effort. Like, here's one reason why I would say that. Do you remember about a year ago where she did like a really out of nowhere post on social media where it was basically like, she said something like, people keep commenting on my weight, but I'm actually one of those people who sort of like eats when I feel like I've like in my emotions or something. Some sort of weird comment like that, like she had for why she felt like she was overweight, or people would point. If you don't know, she actually like went fucking ham after that, like working in the gym, and like I was all jacked and stuff. So like she obviously is someone who's willing to put in the hours. The problem I think in her case was her like starting skill set just wasn't close enough to what people want from a caster. And unfortunately, I've had to tell a lot of people this in Counter-Strike, mate, and no one wants to hear it because it's everyone's dream, is there are so few people can do the job of being a caster. It's such a limited group of people who are going to get that chance that like probably the number one quality you need isn't anything to do with competence. It's being likable. The audience has to genuinely just enjoy listening. So unfortunately, in her particular case, I think even if she'd somehow leveled her skills, or even if there was some way to get it there, like the sort of ship had sailed on the narrative. Like people had sort of already decided they didn't like her. They didn't like anything about the way she was doing it. And everything she said would have been nitpicked anyway. So like, I actually do think, look, it may not in fact be her choice. Who knows? But I think this is actually the right move for everyone, mate. Like, it's why I said to me, it's just sad she couldn't just stay on the broadcast and be the interview person or be the fucking host of the desk. I thought she was pretty good at that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we've talked about her strengths in the past, and also the fact that it has been unfair in the way that Riot has put her in situations and kind of set her up to fail because they didn't actually play to her strengths or allow her to focus on one thing. It felt like she was just being bounced around from task to task and never really given an opportunity to grow in a specific role and to find her audience and to find her appeal because, I straight up, she's not a great caster. And she has other strengths, and if she was allowed to pursue those things fully and solely, I think that the audience would have reacted very differently to her. And to me, that's a disappointment. But at the same time, if you are in that position as talent, you have to be willing to fight for yourself and say, hey, look, I don't like the way that this is going with my job, and I don't feel like I'm the best person to do these things, and you have to be willing to play to your own strengths instead of just doing whatever they want to do, which may cause you to look bad in the end, right? So it's tough. But I do think, at least as it regards to the talent, like I'm just very cynical about what I've seen from Riot this year, and I frankly expect there to be bigger mix-ups in this offseason, especially as they pursue potentially a new commissioner for the league or make some other changes. I've generally been in favor of the way that they've handled the broadcast content so far and the kind of shift in tone, but I think it's very difficult to pull in new viewership and change the product completely if it's the same faces that we've seen for the last 10 years on the broadcast, right? I think it's very hard to do that. It's a
joke, right? Obviously, in about a year and a half, when he feels like it's safe enough and his focus group tells him it's okay, obviously Captain Flowers will use this moment in a brilliant sort of like referential instance in the game, where in the game he'll be like, 1 minute the Drake was there, now it's gone. What was that? The Gabby Durden Drake? See, but only in about a year and a half, it's really safe, and there's just nothing, nothing could go wrong, basically.
Hedging his bets, obviously.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.